guys, welcome. My name is Justin Hast. I am a watch writer, journalist, photographer, primarily a watch lover. I've done it for over a decade now, and it's a pleasure to be here at the watchcollecting.com HQ with my dear friend Nick Bennett. Hey Nick.
Good to see you.
How are you, buddy?
Good, thank you.
Thank you for joining me for this experimental first episode, because guys, we have no idea what we're calling this series. We hope that it's something we can do on a weekly basis, and we'd love you to join us. All we know is we're going to take on new watches, new people, new subjects each week, and we've got a really interesting series to come that we'd love to discuss with you. Series of 3 watches, collection of watches to come, which we'll discuss later. But Nick, before we get into that, this might be the first time that anyone out there has actually seen or felt anything from a member of the team at Watch Collecting. Now, I've bought and sold through the platform over the last year, and hand on heart, they're not paying me a sausage to say this, but hand on heart, I had a really positive experience. Tell us a bit about how you got into watches, and a little bit about Watch Collecting, maybe why it's and how it's disrupting the watch world.
Yeah, my personal journey with the watches has been very much just being an enthusiast. I've never worked in the industry before I started at Watch Collecting, and just through a fortunate series as well. So I started as a copywriter and then moved into content creation. What attracted me to Watch Collecting was the fact that it was offering something different in the marketplace. The tricky thing about buying watches, especially online, is people don't feel a sense of security. Also, I wanted to work somewhere where I really felt that there was enthusiasts at the company as well, and I really got that from Watch Collecting. And the company's really tried to address those pain points in the watch market around high fees through traditional auction houses, and also just talking to people and having a point of contact and not feeling like when you sell a watch, it goes up on a platform and you're completely removed from the process. Mm-hmm. So when I really looked at Watch Collecting as a business, I felt, this is a place I want to be. And, almost 3 years later, I'm really enjoying it. So for people who aren't familiar, Watch Collecting runs 7-day auctions. Watches are going live every single day. And it's really a case of we try to get as many interesting pieces up onto the platform at any given time and make it an exciting place to shop. Mm-hmm. It's an enthusiast-led platform, and it's run for enthusiasts. And part of that is having really interesting pieces for people to look at and buy.
Let's discuss what we've got here in front of us, because for February this year, we've got a thematic coming to the platform. Is that the first time that Watch Collecting has ever run a thematic series of lots going live?
It technically is the second. We did have a Speedmaster collection last year, but this is the first time where we've really decided to go all in on a collection and create a lot of interesting content around it.
Mm-hmm. This is not the full selection, but this is what we think are 3 of the most interesting lots that are coming on. Let's start with this one here on the far left, because the first thing I noticed as I sat down was the fact that there is this wonderful sticker on the back, this green sticker on the back, which for the watch lovers out there will send a shiver down the spine. What have we got here, Nick?
So this is a Zenith Daytona, and it's a watch that I feel really drawn to because I feel like for a brand like Rolex that's known for these small incremental changes to models, the Zenith Daytona feels like a gigantic change to the aesthetic of that model line. Mm-hmm. The case was beefed up, the dial was completely changed, we've got those new style sub-registers which have really shaped the design of the modern Daytona. And then internally, we've also got the introduction of the first automatic movement in a Daytona, mm-hmm. which was outsourced to Zenith. And we spoke off camera about Rolex's unwillingness to work with brands in the modern era like they used to. Mm. Not just through movements, but Tiffany stamped dials,
Asprey.
Domino's pizzas stamped on the dial, and these types of things would never happen anymore. And I think collectors are really drawn to those quirks of Rolex from the old days, which they would never partake in now.
Yeah, it's almost a time capsule, isn't it? And for those at home who are not familiar with the reference, it's incredibly collectible. It's a sort of insider pick. You've got to know, if you know sort of vibe. When you look at this, would you know that this is a Zenith Daytona? Aesthetically, what can you differentiate from this to the modern day references?
From a distance, it's quite hard to tell. from the following generation where Rolex introduced their own in-house movement.
Mm-hmm.
Those watches look very similar, but there are a couple of key indicators that it's a Zenith Daytona. The first being the sub-registers. Those outside chapter rings are just a little bit thinner than the following generation. On the Zenith Daytona, the running seconds are positioned at 9 o'clock, which is more traditional. That's what most watches have. When you think about things like the Valjoux 7750 and other widely used chronograph movements, the seconds is positioned at 9 o'clock. When Rolex introduced their own in-house movement, they moved the running seconds to 6. So they're probably the most obvious differences between the two generations.
And the time frame in which these were produced, just for the inside knowledge there, 1989 to 2000 was the time frame. And this particular model is in fantastic condition.
It is. It's unmarked, essentially. And as you mentioned at the beginning there, it's still got its original case back sticker on. We were just looking at it off camera and marveling at the condition. It's essentially an unworn watch. Yeah,
I love it. I love it. The inside pick, the if you know, you know. So great start. And if we're talking about a motorsport thematic, that's got to be one to lead the race. Pardon the pun.
I think with a brand like Rolex and a name like Daytona, there are few watches that say motorsports than that watch.
From the traditional to the more avant-garde, the more modern, and an unapologetic yellow strap, which I love as well. What are we dealing with here, Nick?
Yeah, so from a Zenith Daytona to a Richard Mille, I mean, I don't think you can get two polar opposite watches, but that's a Richard Mille RM005, and it was done in collaboration with the Formula One driver Felipe Massa. It's made in titanium, one of 300 pieces, and it has that instantly recognizable RM character, tonneau-shaped case, lightweight, highly technical, paired with a bright yellow rubber strap. I mean, it's quintessential RM if there ever was one.
And we were saying earlier that there are some RMs that are not necessarily the most wearable, the most comfortable, but this has to be on the spectrum of being right up there at the top of one of the most comfortable to wear.
Yeah, I think in terms of ergonomics, a lot of RMs, even though they're designed to be comfortable, which they are, they're big and they're quite thick as well. So I think that 005, it sits nicely on the wrist. You know, it's not too thick, the sizes are right, and it's also quite an important watch for RM. It's the first automatic watch that they released, and considering the brand's only been around since 2001, the 005 launched in 2004, so it's a stalwart of the RM collection. It's been around since the early days.
Complication-wise, time only, date function at 7 o'clock, which I'm not. I like a date, but I'm picky, as a lot of others are out there. I'm picky about how it's delivered and designed. In this instance, actually seamlessly integrated. You wouldn't notice it necessarily if you were immediately looking at the dial. It doesn't interfere with the dial balance at all. Just tucked away nicely in that 7 position.
Yeah, it is well positioned. I think the dial layout is nice. I mean, they've managed to incorporate like a very highly technical open work design and make it quite easy to read, which isn't an easy thing to do.
No, agreed. We have to just touch on the RM market. Do you guys get a lot of RMs coming through the doors? Do you notice a lot of them being put up on the site? And where are they relative to where they've been in the last few years? Do you see them rising, falling? Where are they at the moment?
I feel like RM is a victim of its own success in some respects. It's a brand that's become so recognizable that I think people almost feel a little bit self-conscious about wearing them. We do get quite a few through the platform. We have sold a number of them on Watch Collecting, but they're for a very specific type of collector. I think a watch that looks like that is not going to be, you know, a wide-reaching watch, especially at that price point. But for the right type of collector and someone who really appreciates highly technical watchmaking and that kind of avant-garde design, it's a great brand.
There's nothing else quite like it, to be fair, either. You know, it's an important pillar in a collection for the right collector out there. And it's maybe one that you come to in time, you know, as much as that's a cliche. It's probably not your first watch, based on price more than anything else, but it's certainly one that in time you tend to move towards, which is interesting.
Look, it's a bold watch, and I think on this particular model, being in green and yellow, which is a bit of a nod to Massa's Brazilian heritage, that to me is what RM is. You know, if you're going to own one, you may as well have one with a bright yellow rubber strap.
Joyful watchmaking, the idea of creating a product that, a bit like Studio Underdog in the UK, making watches that bring a smile to the face and bring you some joy. And this is proper FU and joyful watchmaking in the same thing, in the same package, right?
I think everyone appreciates fun in the watch world because it is a serious industry, and I think recent times, like you mentioned Studio Underdog, they just released a watch with, you know, pizza graphics on the dial, and we've seen this kind of uptick in popularity for colored dials, you know, Rolex and their celebration dial and their day date with the emojis. I mean, some people can't get their head around it, but at the end of the day, it's about having a bit of fun, and I think it's good for the industry.
Cool. That's the RM then, Nick. So finally, we're coming to another watch that, to be honest, is all about fun as well. One that was a couple of years back, really something that a lot of collectors were hunting, and you know, it seems in the last year or so they've become more readily available. But good examples like this are still hard to find. What do we got here?
So this is a Speedmaster Professional, and it's known as the Tintin. So amongst the sea of limited edition Speedmasters, special edition Speedmasters, this really feels like the one to get. And I think the reason for that is because it has a really interesting story. Its name comes from the fact that it was supposed to be a collaboration with Tintin, the famous comic series. And the story goes that at the last minute, it didn't happen because of a disagreement between the legal owners of Tintin and Amiga. And so what could Amiga do? They had this dial design with this really interesting checkered red pattern, and they decided to just turn it into a racing edition of the Speedmaster. Apparently there's one prototype of the real Tintin watch. Which
was Tintin on that dial?
So the story goes that there was the rocket, the red and white checkered rocket from the comic book series, was positioned at 11 o'clock on the dial. And it's the one prototype that exists sits behind closed doors, and no one's seen it, I guess, apart from, you know, a closed circle with Amiga. So who knows what it actually looks like, but I think the outcome of that is we've got a really interesting racing dial Speedmaster, and one with a really cool backstory.
It's not dissimilar to the Zenith Daytona in the sense that it's a sort of insider's pick. It's if you know, you know. You can see this one a little bit more clearly from a distance than you can knowing that's a Zenith Daytona. It's interesting seeing this design though, because what it does do on the dial is it gives it real depth. It gives it some real character, some real depth. It almost wears and feels a little bit smaller than its true dimensions as well because of that perimeter. Beautifully delivered.
Someone pointed out an interesting factor about that watch. You know, apart from the obvious red and white checkered racing circle around the outside of the dial itself has been changed to more of a gloss black from the traditional moon watch, which is more of a matte finish. Amiga gave that more of a glossy look, and it really suits the red and white and makes that dial really jump off and adds another interesting visual element to it, I think.
And again, in fantastic condition. This really doesn't look like it's been worn.
Yeah, that is another really great example. And, you know, along with the Daytona, the lots that we've managed to acquire for this collection really present well, and there's a lot of examples that are in really great condition.
And this is not the only watch in that so-called racing series from Amiga, is it? There are others.
There are others, but I think this one really stands out for its backstory and the fact that, you know, the watch world's really littered with these stories of watches that no one wanted, no one liked. They sat in the windows of authorized dealers not moving, and I think they only sold, less than 2,000 in total because no one really wanted them. And of course, now they're so popular, there's not many examples, and it's really made the prices increase. But I think people are so used to seeing these really manufactured limited editions from Amiga. You know, they even celebrate like the 45th anniversary of a certain occasion, like the Snoopy Award.
No industry likes an anniversary quite like the watch industry.
I know. And so when you have brands capitalizing on these kind of anniversaries and making these limited editions, when you come across a watch that has this quirky, you know, really genuine backstory about how it came about, it makes sense that collectors really go for that.
Very cool. Thanks, Nick. Just give us a brief, so when does this kick off?
So lots are going to be going live throughout February. They'll be on the website. If you jump onto watchcollecting.com, there's a dedicated banner on the homepage which is titled the Motorsport Collection. If you follow the link through that homepage, it'll take you to all the lots, and they'll just be staggered and released throughout the month of February.
Nick, thank you so much, boy. And guys, thank you very much for joining us. As I say, this is the first instalment of hopefully many to come. Please leave your comments below. Let us know which out of the three you like the most, and maybe a theme that you'd like to see down the line that you've not seen yet from any other auction platform. So thank you very much for joining us, and until next time, go well.